Mm.
Playa de Carmen, Mexico next week. Let's see if you're in Playa de Carmen. Let me know. We can go for some cervezas. But so I won't be around next week, but that doesn't mean you guys can't meet up and do whatever you want. You're by means, maybe Rob or Jed or whatever. You guys can, let me know. I can send you the details and logging into this stuff. Um, but I won't be around, and I'm not allowed to bring my laptop. So I'm gonna have some sort of separation anxieties in Mexico there. So look, I'll be away probably a couple weeks, and the next one falls on like Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, which I might hang out on in the Discord possibly. So if you want to, if maybe there for those who want to take a break from their holiday festivities. But just as a heads up, maybe, and then the following week after that falls on New Year's Day for it. So again, lots of all the holidays sort of fall on Fridays over the next few weeks. So I'm not sure exactly how we're gonna maneuver that, but yeah. Rob, we had a great hackathon last weekend, right?
Yes, absolutely. That was wonderful. So many folks from all over, all around the world, hanging out for like 72 hours over the course of the weekend, all nights of all hours into the evening, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And that's coming together now as far as what the cumulative creations from the community. I think there was we didn't see all of the teams in the Kaltura room necessarily, but some folks were there and there's 5 engineers behind them kind of thing. So I think we probably had close to 40 engineers working on various aspects of the project. So really, really neat for the first global hackathon. There's structural and organizational stuff. We can get ready for the second one, but it was really productive and a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You enjoy it? You came up with some pretty
We
interesting stuff.
we all did. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we all came up with some pretty cool stuff, and it's just some amazing work coming out of our crew. And the takeaway for me is we like to build things, but be it vibing or agentic engineering or a little bit of both. We really enjoy the process of creating things and the feeling you get when it works and someone else is like, man, that's pretty freaking cool, right? And at the heart of what we do, it's that kind of sharing of the things that we've discovered in more than just like the AI telling me that I've just broken every known record known to man for computing, right? Which is like, okay, thanks, Claude. But when someone else is like, yeah, this is legitimate and cool and useful, it just makes it a little more real. And that's what the hackathon was really good for. And the other part was fun, was like just jumping on at like midnight or I'm a night owl, as you probably know. And so, having other people just to chat with in the middle of the night was actually kind of a fun process.
One that
Um,
stood out was Alejandro. He built that 3D globe where you could look for movie content by geography and then zoom in and see where things were actually filmed. That was really cool. There was a ton more.
yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of a lot of really interesting, just unique tools that we were doing. Let me give you a quick. I felt like I was like cheating, entering, but I could not help myself to like enter, and we all won. There wasn't exactly a prize. So the prize is this. I mean, and we gotta talk to our friends in France for a moment. But the prize was essentially we got some money. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna get swag for everybody. I think is the
Mhm.
idea, and we're at least we'll see how far the 5K or whatever we're getting goes. But the idea is we all get t-shirts and hoodies and whatnot. And what our plan is here is to get I think well Bren's got a printful page set up, which I gotta take a look at. I think that's on me for not looking at that. But basically, it's got a coupon option.
Mhm.
So what I think we're going to try to do is get coupons to all our, Agentic, Foundation members, obviously, just as a thank you for the support you've given us, even including the double, triple bookings, hopefully not quadruple bookings or payments. We had some issues. And really do appreciate the support everyone's given us this year. So if we can give you a hat or something, that's the least we could do. So we'll have to figure out a way to get that all organized. Maybe we'll create a Discord channel. So if you've entered the hackathon, you're definitely in. And if you're an Agentix, a foundation member of sorts, I guess paid, we got your email, so we'll get you that stuff. And if you aren't, we'll sign up quick, and maybe you can we'll you'll get in as well. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the swag. We all need a Genic Foundation or a Genic Engineering hoodies, man, for sure, for sure. I've got my Canada toque on today because I've been shoveling for a week and it's 20 below outside. But yeah, this
That's
needs this needs
20
to be.
below Celsius for the Americans. So it's like minus 100 for in Fahrenheit or something. I don't know the exact conversion. I think it's zero actually. Never mind. All right. So yeah, it's been an interesting week for us to say the least. There's a new player in town, which on what in any normal time of year I would have been like, hey, it's proving that the industry is maturing when the largest players are now trying to create foundations and coming together to push the concepts of agentic engineering, which is all true. It's just unfortunate that they wanted to use the exact same name that we have, right? So there's a little bit of like, wow, we were right. We're going in the right direction. And the amount of people congratulating me on something that I was not involved in is a little concerning. Right?
Clearly, there's some
I-
overlap.
That's
yeah,
an
a little.
opportunity.
Actually, hey Rube, look, if this was my comment earlier in that channel, I don't know if you saw, but if you did get a sponsorship of $5,000, you can. So I've done lots of trademark related stuff in my many lifetimes as an entrepreneur, and as a micro entity, both in Canada and the United States, because you have set up the foundation, um, you could trademark it. Like the foundation could, if you have like $500, chances are we could file a trademark application because you guys have um, we have as a foundation first use, like by like a freaking long shot. And usually it's whether there's a commercial transaction happening, whether people are using the code, all that kind of like we have all the backups
Yeah,
for all of that.
Yeah,
and we
it's probably a
meet
good
up
idea. I think
like 7 or 8 states across the U.S. over the last year.
Uh,
California,
would
Georgia.
it be okay if we contact you, Alex, to help us out through this process?
we
Yeah,
should
sure.
we should get Ken on the line, our
Yeah.
friendly neighborhood lawyer. And in fairness to you guys, we're a ragtag team of folks. Maybe we were too loose and good in our approach to how we set this up, and we were just
Oh,
having
Ruth, don't feel
a little
bad. Don't
fun.
feel bad. We all learn as we go along. I think one of the things I was thinking about, I always see things as opportunities, not problems, right? So one thing I was thinking about was that let us think about maybe adding onto our LinkedIn in terms of experience so we can all be like members visibly of the foundation. So I think that's a good call.
We do that already. So there's 100, I don't know, 120 people who have associated themselves from a, where on LinkedIn where you can say where you're working or whatever as like associates and various things that we're doing as part of. So if you haven't done so already, go to LinkedIn, find the Agentics, ours with our little infinity logo, and add yourself as an associate or a supporter or whatever it is you want to put on there and you'll add yourself to I think more than 100 and something people who have already done that. The other thing we do for affiliation, just as if you're curious, sometimes on LinkedIn or Twitter and a few other places, X I guess they call it, you'll see the infinity emoji that you can add on like your phone or copy and paste from somewhere other, and that also kind of shows affiliation. I think we've got hundreds of people that use that icon now because I'm always seeing people. And whenever I do see someone with that icon, I make sure that I go out of my way to actually add you. I know I'm terrible at like accepting friend requests or whatever. I try, but it's just a little overwhelming. But I do. If you're a member or you're like an affiliated added member of the foundation, as a job or whatever, I will add you there. And if I happen to see the Infinity logo. So anyway, throwing that out
Yeah,
there
that
for
sounds
everyone.
Driven.
that sounds great. So that sounds like what we need is something for onboarding so that everybody can see where they need to be going to and what things that they can do. So just
Yeah.
something, when you sign up on somewhere, we have something to onboard.
Yeah.
Driven, you need to think like a pirate on this. This is a huge brand confusion opportunity where you could shine. You could shine that other organization. Glad they joined our movement. And
Yeah.
It's like I kind of did that a little bit on their LinkedIn post. I'm saying, oh, you can check out the website at agentics.org. That generated like 3,000 3,000 visits to our website because they don't have a website yet. They have a PR. All right. And yeah, I
you
don't
should
want
keep doing that, man.
yeah, I'm gonna get my bot. I'm gonna call it the Linux pirate, and all it's gonna do is monitor social media, and whenever they post something about their foundation, it'll send a link to the agentics.org. That'll be my next bot.
Or
Just
or
replicate
research
it.
that you've done at agentics.org that is better than whatever they're doing, right? I mean, they're just taking on MCPs and you built some amazing MCPs. So just like point them to the work.
If you can't join them, you troll them. That's the
Exactly.
takeaway.
So I think
John.
sorry, what, just to hijack again. So like I kept saying, everything opportunity, right? So one of the things we've just come out of a hackathon where we basically focused on a single problem, right? So now this foundation, they have this MCP problem. Why don't we also use it as an opportunity to think about what problem we maybe want to really shine the light on as well? So it's almost like the spirit of the hackathon. Is that something that we want to think about?
Yeah, these are all really great, good ideas. I think that those are, I think the takeaway I was trying to get at earlier was we need to do more hackathons. If there's a thing that we all enjoy doing, it appears to be, vibing for a purpose.
Yep.
So regardless of whether it's a corporate driven whatever organization, if we can just keep pushing the boundaries by trying and experimenting, failing, succeeding together, then we're doing something that they're not in that at the very least. I want to get to John because John probably has lots of opinions on the trademark. I'm sure. How's it going, John?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm good. I get along.
Good. Well, the timing of it was very unfortunate. They filed in October and announced the day after the hackathon. So the timing of it to me is not friendly of the release of the announcement. So, you know, there's a lot of ways of handling this. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm just a guy who's part of the foundation. I'm not entitled to give legal advice, but I have handled trademark cases in the past.
Sorry, John,
And
just ask a quick question. You said that they filed. Are you saying that they've already filed a trademark application for Gentex Foundation?
yes, they filed in
Okay.
October.
Yeah.
I have a copy of that. I've looked at it. I've done some research on it just for my own information. There's a number of ways that people, can handle this. One is ignore it and rely on pre-existing relationships. I kind of liked the post that was up yesterday suggesting that there were different places for each organization. And I don't remember the poster's name, but that Agentics, our organization, is more about teaching people, and the uh, other organization is about establishing standards. So there's already a divergence and a complementary way of approaching this. And I think that looking at the trademark filings, it might be helpful to develop a strategy along with legal counsel to make that division of interests and responsibilities complementary and in a way that's non-threatening. My concern for this organization is that if nothing is done, it could possibly result in a situation later where we would not be able to use our own name. And that would be very, very uh, disruptive of the work that's in progress. So if I can be helpful to anybody, I'm happy to be helpful. If not, I'm happy not to be helpful. But I would want to run something by somebody who is the legal counsel of the organization, or if that person did not want to be involved in it, help find somebody who would be. And that's all I have to say. But I think the goal should be to keep the peace between the organizations, maintain relationships, and let everybody focus on their specialized areas of interest and not start a war.
Yeah, and what John is saying,
Yeah,
guys, by the way,
yeah.
just like classes in JavaScript, there are classes when you file for trademark, there are a zillion different classes. So a while ago, Canada was like this really cheap and cheerful place where it was very cheap to file for like being very, very broad. So you can have two companies called Score, but one's a pizza parlor and one's a betting parlor. So you can have the same name in different classes of services. So the whole point of talking with an IP lawyer is identifying like what was the application, what are the classes, and John's perfectly correct in saying that it can be collaborative so long as like you're playing in your own space and you're filing for different classes.
Uh, we could collaborate, but that would require a conversation. And right now, unfortunately, all the conversations happening between us and them is through intermediaries, which is weird.
Well,
Like, what are we like the G8 at the UN here? Like, why not just call me up? You know?
well, the goal is to get to that place. And that may take a little bit of preliminary strategy and action.
Yeah,
Correct.
I think we need to do something. And I think if we always talk about working groups. I think, and you don't need to be a lawyer. Like, you don't put your lawyer hat on. What we do, we need some help from the crew to help guide us through what our next steps are, so we don't end in a spot where, you know, we create a term in a profession dedicated to agentics, but can't actually use the word,
Yeah. Ken
right?
should be back
And
this week from Tokyo, and then we should be able to rally to. Oh, you can't hear me? Sorry,
yeah.
Kenneth.
No,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Yeah. So Ken Carter should be back from Tokyo this week, and then we can rally together for that strategy session, right? Are you going to have some time this week, Rube, or when do you actually leave?
I leave Wednesday morning, and I know I don't, but it's crazy. Everybody wants to meet before I leave, so I've got basically no time. But I could do like evenings. We will figure it out. I'm sure we'll figure it out. But
So
yeah, it's
The other thing I wanted to add on this is that the symbol may be independently trademarked, and that should be looked at, whether it should be two filings, one for the symbol and one for uh, um, the name, or whether they should be done together. And I think that should be something that the working group, and in conjunction with the lawyer, should vet as well.
Yeah, we obviously Infinity might be a little difficult to trademark, but Dory's work on the revised logo is original. It's not she designed a unique sort of typography, I think you'd call it. So yeah, we could definitely trademark that.
Just turn the
Name
G and
wise,
make it the infinity symbol.
yeah, something like that, exactly. And in terms of the terminology, there's been a lot of discussion here, about who was first or whatever. I don't know who was first, but what I can tell you in terms of when we collectively started using this was in early 2023, in terms of to mean what we mean agentics to mean as a kind of autonomous operating sort of application with agency. But before that, the idea of agents has been around for as long as computing has been around. So the idea of an agent is certainly not new. The idea of recursion, the idea of autonomy, the idea of it running in a swarm, in a hive, all the various forms of high performance, low latency loops, strange and otherwise, is entirely us. And I'm comfortable saying that those are all our innovations. So, you know,
When
I'm proud of what the work that we're doing and the results that we're getting. Maybe we
when
should
did
be
you
more.
acquire the domain?
Roof, if I could just interrupt here, those considerations of originality and the like uh, don't necessarily apply in trademarks. Trademarks don't require that as a general rule. It's you you take a something and it becomes recognized. You become recognized and associated with that, and it becomes an asset of yours. Is generally the way it works, to my understanding. And it doesn't have to be original. It just has to be the way you put it together. And I think you need to run that past the lawyer as well. But that's my general understanding of it. So I don't think you have to worry about whether it's original. I think the time is very important. I know that Bence posted an early video from, I think it was early 2024. You've got tons of video showing you've been using this name 2, 3 times a week for years. My understanding from what I looked at the filing was there was no prior use uh, uh, indicated in the original filing by the Linux Foundation people. It was as October 2025. So on that point, it seems that you can document quite clearly the chain
Hundreds,
of
hundreds. We do these calls twice a week for 2 years. Like that, there, I think we're probably in the hundreds of publicly recorded, conversations. Someone did I've seen someone saying a list of like I've been losing weight over the last year and a half on my exercise bike, and it was like the progression of my weight loss, which was a little weird, I might add. I won't point who sent that. There was another one I saw that someone sent me was like all the times I bashed a certain tech company, which was also a little weird. But so we have tons, and the guys at Kaltura have basically taken all those videos and transcribed them. So all I need to do is go to video.agentics and say, type in agentic and see how many times we said the word agentics over the last 2 years, which is
I think so.
thousands.
I want to go back to what John said. So obviously there's different ways in terms of how trademarks work. So I had this same issue applied to me before, and I didn't do anything about it. And a friend of mine had it applied to him, but they sent him a cease and desist. Stop using our name, which is really what we want to get away from. So rather than even trying to protect our name, it's actually for someone not to say we can't use the name anymore. So I think just legitimizing this prior use and surfacing it up, I think is something worth doing. In terms of the actual Agentics name, I would say even before joining this group, it was something I was using. So I wouldn't necessarily say based on that. I think the fact that it was called Agentics Foundation, we want to say whoever comes along and creates names similar or not, whether we choose to contest with them, we need to operate autonomously and carry on doing what we're doing because we were always doing it irrespective of what that new group's doing.
Yeah.
So I think protecting what we do
Yes.
probably should be worth thinking about. And someone else also said in terms of the money that we have. Now, I don't, I know I participated in the hackathon, but I do know that I would much rather the money went towards protecting the name than being given to someone like myself for a t-shirt or anything else. So it's something we're thinking about whether or not we want to spend it on legalese rather than spending it on our promised gifts because we didn't
Okay.
really do the hackathon for that.
Yeah,
Make sure
that's a
that,
fair.
sorry,
it's the
Ruth.
ounce of prevention. It's the
Okay.
ounce of prevention.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and that'll form it. Everybody is welcome to that strategy session when we line that up next week. But Mario has had his hand up for quite a bit. I want to make sure we get a chance to get to him. Mario, how are you?
Yeah. Hi, I'm good, thanks. So I just have a few quick questions and suggestions. So trademark application implies process, and I assume trademark application's been done in the US and in Canada. Is that correct?
Sorry, you
What
broke up
was
a
the
little bit.
question?
Yeah, we can like all of the legal around the trademark conversation. We should have a dedicated hour with council on that next week, I think. Because there's a whole, not to, I don't want to cut you short, Mario, but if
Yeah.
there's something specific, please. But
So-
just I don't know,
I want to
we
keep.
should.
I'll keep this brief, but I just have to make a few points. So, it's so easy to document that we've used this name used before. So I think that it brought to whatever application it has been filed for trademark. And I don't think we need a lawyer for that. I don't think we need to spend money. I think we need a lawyer only if we're threatened to, have something done on us. I think there's a few simple things, and I'm willing to participate and help with that and do any voluntary type of work. And another thing I wanted to suggest on the friends thing, I'm willing to play dumb and try to contact the Linux Agentic Foundation and try to as much information trying to do
those conversations,
that kind of
those
stuff.
conversations, yeah, those conversations are sort of kind of happening, and I really do appreciate everyone that has reached out, and we know everybody there. It's not like they're an unknown group of people.
I don't.
They chose to flex their muscle in a way that it's hard to, it's hard for us to defend against, and that was a choice they made for whatever reason, and we're gonna do what we can, and we're literally posting this, I'm broadcasting this live on LinkedIn for all I know they're watching. So we're not looking for battles. We want our mission is simple. We want Agentics to be a thing. We want to help make that thing happen. And we want to empower each other as much as we can. And we aren't particularly keen on the idea of a corporate, shill or entity that serves the purposes of a bunch of giant, billion-dollar companies. And so we've chosen a more difficult path for sure. I could have got sponsorship from a whole bunch of companies and would have probably given us a lot more room to move in different ways. So, we're moving to 2026. 2026 pretty clearly is going to be the year of Agentics. I've already pretty much booked up for the entire year, and the year hasn't even started yet. And so if I'm any kind of representation of the opportunity, it looks like it's going to be big. So we definitely need to reimagine what this looks like as the technology grows. This is probably a forcing function that we had to do anyway, and just was done in a way that wasn't necessarily the most friendly. We're gonna roll with it. It is what it is. Life hands you lemonade, you make lemonade or what, or lemon. I don't know. You know what I mean. Anyway, I'm not. It is what it is, right? I think we have more to be proud of at this point, and let's focus on the successes we've had this year, and we'll have that legal call next week. I don't think we need to talk about that anymore today. I think is the takeaway, and I do appreciate everyone's support. It was, I think, the thing I liked the most this week were all the unsolicited emails and calls and text messages and everything that sent me. The fact that you guys cared about how I felt and thought, that really was important to me, and I really do appreciate the empathy and the consideration that we give each other. And that, if that is, at the very least, is something we should be proud about. What else can I say? Rob, I didn't do a demo today. If you guys want to tune in to yesterday's crazy Vibecast, you can probably find that somewhere or other. That was epic. Thanks everyone who contributed ideas, and to Guy. We actually ended up implementing that crazy small model from Samsung. I'll publish that probably at some point over the next day or so. So thanks for pointing me at that. And Rob, we've got, who do we got lined up to present today?
So Chris from Plotly. And then I got a few slides, and then if anybody else would like to do a demo, a lightning talk as well. So
we've got a whole collection of hackathon entries. So yeah, I would say if you want to do a quick demo of your hackathon entry after we finish up here, and the couple presentations we have, just raise your hand, or I don't know, we'll get back to it, but get set up. We'll give you a couple minutes to show off what you built if you want to do that.
Or DM me in the chat and we'll get it queued. Is that Chris from Plotly? Hello, Chris. Welcome. Welcome back.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
You guys were on about a month and a half ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And, and you've been cooking, huh?
Yeah, we have.
Excellent.
And yeah, today I've got kind of a talk that's a little bit more high level, just talking a little bit more about some of the challenges that we think about when going like full agentic, since that's what this community is pretty interested in.
Nice.
So excited to talk about that.
You have some slides. You
I
gotta
do. Yep.
you can take the screen share there.
Cool. You okay for me just taking it away?
Yeah, go for it.
Great. Okay, can y'all see these Google Slides?
Yes.
Cool. All right. Hey, I'm Chris. I'm a co-founder of the data visualization company Plotly. We've been around for about 13 years. We've got a huge open source following, largely in the Python, JavaScript, and R communities for data science and analytics. Our open source libraries are downloaded tens of millions of times a month. And I'm based in San Francisco. There's my email. I'm not on LinkedIn, but if you want to connect, shoot me an email after this. And so we've been building open source visualization capabilities for over 10 years. And one of the things that, of course, AI is very good at is writing code. And so it's actually a really good natural fit for our technology. We built a AI native data analytics and visualization product where our community and customers write prompts, and then we turn their prompts into interactive data visualizations using some of our best practices. And you can create very sophisticated, very advanced, beautiful data analytics and visualizations very easily in prompts, using a lot of our own sort of best practices that we embed into our prompts and context, combined with embedding a Python runtime into the product and using our open source visualization libraries for rendering the results. You can make pretty advanced things in very few lines of code, very few lines of English now, or very few lines of prompts. So just kind of an example here, what this looks like. You can create, this is a classic small multiples chart. If you were writing this code manually in a library like D3 in JavaScript, this might be hundreds and hundreds of lines of code that you'd be writing. And so we have a very sort of declarative prompting style for creating these visualizations. And so, there's this huge transformation that we see among our customer base, community base, where instead of writing hundreds of lines of Python or JavaScript code, we're writing tens of lines of English or the language of your choice to get the same result. So that's just sort of a quick high-level background of the product. I know this community is interested in what it takes to take humans out of the loop and have fully autonomous agents. And so I just wanted to talk about some of the challenges that we think about and that we see in the data visualization analytics space in particular when we do this. And I'd love to talk about this. I'd love to hear the community's thoughts or any references of ways I should be thinking about this. So the fundamental challenges that I see that are kind of not even dependent on technology itself, but just kind of fundamental challenges is ambiguity, where you might have multiple plausible answers and there might not be enough context provided to come up with the answer. And I'll talk about some examples there. Semantic mismatch. So you're trying to find an answer, but the data that you are looking for doesn't provide the answer. And so, how do you, LLMs are quick to try to come to a conclusion. So you need to kind of balance, not balance the effort for an agent to go and try to find an answer with also recognizing that the answer might not be provided in the context. And then broader context around the business or the organization that might not be, or around the technology that might not be in the data as well. These are kind of fundamental challenges that for us mean that in our products, there's a human in the loop for a lot of these decisions that are being made. And then there's some other technology and product challenges I'll talk through. These aren't surmountable. These are more just design product engineering challenges that we can get past. They aren't fundamental to this. So trust is a big one. Learning over time in actually interpreting the visualizations. Some of these things of semantic mismatch is ambiguity, where from this really great paper that Microsoft wrote and co-authored with another startup that was working on natural language to SQL. So I highly recommend this paper. It was written last year, but remains really relevant. And so they talk about ambiguity in data. So if you have, say, a data set and there is a column that's called revenue one and a column that's called revenue new and a column that's called revenue, and you're asked to say, okay, what's the revenue for this company? It's pretty ambiguous of which column to choose. Do you choose revenue new, or you choose the column that's called revenue, or the column that's called revenue one? There's three possible answers, and there's not enough information in the database itself to reasonably come to a conclusion there. So this is where a human in the loop might have context, historical context about why those columns were named that way. And that data might not be saved anywhere within the organization. It might just be this like tribal knowledge. And so that's a huge issue with doing data analytics in a purely agentic way, is that there's a lot of tribal knowledge that just isn't stored anywhere, and a lot of inherent ambiguity in data in particular. That's, multiple columns named the same thing, or requests that you're making where you say, show me growth over time. And it's like, what particular metric of growth are you interested in? So if you're building a fully agentic system where there's no human in the loop, maybe you're looking at all three of those things. Maybe you're trying to find additional clues or context in the data. Maybe you're looking at all the possible answers and then comparing them against each other. But you might just not have the right answer. You could come to the wrong conclusion. Ways that we're trying to solve this in our product, actually, because we have a little bit more human in the loop, is we're looking at providing surveys in the product. So at any point where there is a moment of ambiguity, we say, hey, we found these 4 columns. Which ones of these do you think you should choose? Right? Because it doesn't matter how good the model is. It's just ambiguous. Semantic mismatch is where the column of data looks like it could give you the answer, but you interpret it wrong. So the example from this research paper is looking at like cause of death, and you're looking at, so the example was how many singers died to COVID in the year 2021. And in the database, year doesn't mean the cause of death year means the time that singer released their latest album. And so you might make the SQL query, oh, I'm going to look at, this particular year, thinking that it was the year of death. This is a really morbid use case. Sorry, pulling straight from the research paper. But it's, it's like, okay, what does year mean? Year can be multiple things. And again, that information might not be in the database. So you could really, really easily come to a conclusion based off of what you think the semantic meaning of a column is, and it actually means something else. We do a lot in our product where we try to pull out semantic meanings from the data. And a lot of times it's right, but it requires a human in the loop to verify. And if there's no human in the loop, that gets difficult to do. Wrong conclusion is one of my favorite examples. I see this a lot as I look at.
Last couple minutes there, Chris.
Okay, thanks. Where you say, okay, the data says, hey, the sales are down. But are the sales down, or was there actually just like a bug in the telemetry system that dropped reporting events by 10% per week? Again, another thing it's kind of all these things are related to the theme not being broader context not being available in the data set that you're looking, and might not even be stored anywhere. And then more on the sort of product side is just general trust. There's a lot of spot checking of data that's required today. Some of the LLMs, you could automate some of this agentically of looking at intermediate queries and things like that. Learning over time is a big challenge. So you're making a lot of intermediate queries along the time, and then you start a new LLM session. How are you storing and compacting what you learned so that future sessions can do it? And how can you do this automatically? And the final kind of interesting technological challenge is, like in data visualization, a visualization is worth 1,000 words. And can we actually take the visualizations that we're creating, send them back to the LLM, and have them interpret it directly and come to a conclusion? That's an area that hasn't really had a lot of work done lately. So those are some of the issues that we're thinking about with agentic analytics. It's my email, but love to chat more about this with anybody that finds this area interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And the space, as you point out, is really interesting right now. And if any of you tuned into some of our previous live casts and whatnot, you would have seen us sort of playing in that space in between the vector and our sort of newfound love of the hyperbolic structures within vector and the sort of interpretation of that space using things like graph and other sort of, realities that we can paint within that. So what you're doing a really good job of is taking the next step. It's like, okay, we understand how to find that information semantically through different types of structure, and then understand that information through applied, attention mechanisms that, exist within the data, and then visualizing it. Right. And
Hmm.
and what's interesting about the visualization part is it's never been easier to use these types of visualization tools. You can use an artifact with Plotly in Claude or Gemini or whatever you prefer, and basically say use that package. And to be honest, you don't even really need to know how the package works. It just kind of auto-magically makes it look good. And
Hmm.
that you guys have done a good job of that. And one another advantage to being sort of an open source core.
Hmm. Yeah,
Although
absolutely.
it also on the flip side makes it really hard to figure out how to make a business around like enterprise dashboards and additional capabilities when the AI can just do it magically,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So how do you leverage both sides of that, like making it open
Yeah.
enough that the agents can discover you and use it, but keeping the bits and pieces that keep your business running, making money.
Hmm.
Like what?
Yeah, we find a lot of value for our enterprises just purely in the platform. So the underlying tools to create these visualizations and things like that, free, open source, totally commoditizing that technology. But then once you start doing it within an organization, you need like the things like single sign-on and management of these applications. You're creating a lot of visualizations. You need that level of governance on top of that. Then that's where we've decided to commercialize the software.
And what would the primary difference be there?
It would be mostly around the layer to manage and create many of these visualizations. So doing this within our product itself, Plotly Studio, instead of doing
Mhm.
it within ChatGPT or Claude.
What
In the tooling that we're building
is
out.
that really is that an advantage though? To me, having to use a dashboard is a disadvantage. If I can just
Mhm.
ask Claude to go do it, that's would do 99% of what I would need, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the way it works within an organization is that one person might create it, and if it's an answer that you're looking at every day, then rather than going through another transcript every day to ask for the same question, being able to view an artifact that was already created and verified and look at those results every day. So if you're a
But isn't
sales
that
team member,
that's the
then you
purpose of
might,
that's the purpose of an autonomous agent to do that.
right. Yeah, but instead of if you need the verification to make sure that the results are correct and sort of certified, right? And for the sort of operational tools or visualizations that are used every day, rather than having your end users kind of go through the same chat transcript every day, which can take minutes,
Okay.
being able to just pull
So
up the result and say, oh, okay, yeah, these are the numbers that I'm interested
so
in.
so a human in the loop needs to sort of act as the final verifier of is this correct?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
The
No, it's
platform
good.
is to help identify those gaps in the logic. Working with the platform helps you sort of condition and clean up and find those assumptions in that. Is that the
Hmm.
idea?
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I just wanted to pipe in that I love the visualization and also your ambiguity. I'm actually doing some real testing on ambiguity measurements. So what you have there is in line with what my research is showing.
Mm.
So I will, just to let you know, I'm going to reach out to you because I'm doing my final capstone on really it's a neurosymbolic language with the purpose of reducing ambiguity, and I need a wow factor for
Mm.
visual presentation. So everything you showed today just went, oh my goodness, my hours every week of what I'm working on. This is a perfect solution. So I think great job. I'll reach out to you separately to talk about the ambiguity stuff. But I love
Cool.
it.
Appreciate that.
Well, thanks again, and really appreciate you guys coming in and giving these presentations. It's definitely useful for the sorts of things we're building.
Can I can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Cool.
can hear.
Yeah. Sorry, I was messing with my mic. Yeah, just to add on to Chris's points, having worked very closely with C-suite across different organizations, uh, I used to use Plowly quite a bit for like our markdown scripts to just auto-populate decks and stuff. And so what I've gathered is that it's usually like one or two slides where, your CFO just wants to see what the bullet points are and maybe like one verified fact-checking graph, if you will. So I see what you're saying, Chris, and I guess just to transfer that knowledge, that's basically what you're kind of asking for and how to develop the AI to make sure it knows what it's supposed to be developing. And then to answer that question, you kind of want to be from the perspective of like investors relations slash market intelligence, where basically whatever you're feeding to your C-suite or decision makers is going to end up on an earnings call. So how you portray information is basically it needs to be quick, cut, and designed uh, for lack of better term, the ADHD for investors. They just want to see what's important and communicate it quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's exactly it. Yeah, and being able to reload it, when the
Oh yeah,
data changes. And I think that's a big thing too, is that when we look at sort of the chat-based workflows, um, once you want to be able to create that artifact that's then tied to the real-time data. So then we can go back and recheck it, reload it, right, without needing to like start a new transcript and ask the same set of questions again and come to the same results. If you have the artifact that you create that is then hooked into the real-time data, you then can go back to that artifact at any time and always see the latest results, which is a huge, time-saving piece. So it's sort of the importance of the artifact, I think, is really key, in addition to the sort of exploratory answer or, experience of chatting or working with an agent, either to create that artifact or to come up with a one-off answer to something.
gotcha. And then this is somewhat connected towards Brad slash Rev.
Thank you.
I actually sent Brad many moons ago some pretty bad AI slop, but that was actually a SQL database learning module. And then Rev, I'm glad you mentioned that you were looking into the hyperbolic space for basically inference memory compression. I was waiting till some of my math was complete, but the system that I'm working on at the moment is pretty, what's the word? Tangential to your system, except I'm trying to build it internally for pure memory compression, just integer only basis, so that way there's no drift. But I think in regard to what Chris was asking is just to have always the repository of information available and to do that efficiently across an agentic system. Uh, I think mostly the stuff you've worked on is already pretty solid and low latency and memory recall. But I guess in terms of hyperbolic graph structure, uh, you can, it's a little bit hard to explain because it doesn't exist yet, but, or I guess it's close to a quantum graph structure, except,
The Yeah,
sorry,
the
go ahead.
the hyperbolic. So just a quick refresher for everyone on sort of Euclidean, higher dimensional data versus hyperbolic. So when you use traditional vectors, right, and if you want to think about it in your brain, how it actually is displayed, it uses Euclidean field, right? It's a plane, it's a piece of paper, right? So it's like this. Now, when you look at the structure of a hyperbolic approach, it uses a sort of expanding sphere and then with a center point, and then all the information spreads out infinitely from that point. Now, when you ask, oh, what's the difference between that and doing, a more traditional approach, is when you look, let's say you're looking at a plane and you look off in the distance, it's kind of blurry, and maybe your focal point is in the middle. What that does is cause a distortion in the information, and then you have to use algorithms of various sorts to sort of fix that sort of distorted view. You don't get that distortion in a hyperbolic structure. Now, when you combine that with things like the HNSW algorithm, which allows you to find the path through that kind of world really quickly, you can get an 8 to 10x improvement in terms of speed, X, like 1,000% kind of thing. And now, when you apply that within the structure of like heavy graph information, like think of a genome. and the correlation between a genome and your gut biome, right? The bacteria that exists in your gut, and saying how those two things correlate. What you can do with these structures, especially in a hypergraphic structure, is you can create neighborhoods. So the neighborhoods are a secondary structure of the information that resides within the hyperbolic universe. So you can think of it like in our universe, looking at the difference between a galaxy and a solar system and potentially a constellation, which makes a constellation most likely would be made up of either groups of things, right? And so then you can group the different parts within the hyperbolic space. So if you're doing a swarm, you might have a group devoted to the optimal deployment of the swarm itself. And then you might have another part that said, here's what the swarm is doing. And then you might have yet another part that says, here's the results or a causal effect of the things that it did. And now you can traverse that in almost real time. Like when you use this with Rust, for example, you can do that traversal in under a millisecond. Now, if you do that in a Euclidean plane without the HSNW and whatnot, and in Python, suddenly what takes you 1 millisecond in Rust takes you 300 milliseconds in Python without all those those components. So long story short, if you were doing any form of vector right now, you should be using hyperbolic structures for most things. Now, there's certain areas where that doesn't make sense, but for 90+% of everything you're going to do, you're going to get better performance out of those components.
Yeah. Hey, Rolf, just one comment to that. So the vectors in Euclidean space, I think it's an artifact of proliferation of GPUs, because if you talk to like signal processing old school people, the space they operate in, it's actually infinite dimensional space, right? Because you just
it's
the
infinite, but
coordinates
it's distorted. I'm not.
It's not Euclidean space at all. It's the space. Basically, you can build vectors if you get a signal and you just break it down in like individual frequencies, right? That space is infinite dimensions. You can like basically go as much as possible, right? And actually, it's a funny thing you mentioned constellations. It's exactly, they're not even in Euclidean space. They are in. It's a distortion of the observer on Earth, because for people, things the stars are together. It might be some very like dim stars, but very close by, and something like millions light years away, but very big. And they tend to be like from you, like you just look at that direction and you think, those are together. But it might be something much closer that's like you have to go to Australia to see it, like, and it's you don't even see it, right? So that's exactly like, so the spaces and things, that's like fascinating, and I'm glad you go in like hyperbolic. But if you look around, like there is thousands of different type of spaces like that. It's basically, it's a view of your world, like it's how you, because the subjects, they like a distance, it's basically, that's how people decided partition space. But it could be like something like completely different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And actually, yeah, so the constellations, they come if you don't think about Euclidean, if you think about polar coordinates, like then they are together, like, so that's
Rolf, I already shared the paper about heart beating manifold about hyperbolic space. The idea is the embedding space is hyperbolic, is a Riemannian manifold, but it's not smooth. But my question here, you don't have access into Claude and ChatGPT, so how do you deal with that architecture?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So the question, you are dealing with hyperbolic space, but when you do your agentic, you don't have access to Claude. It's closed models, and ChatGPT is closed. So how you will deal with that information?
I'm working independently of their language model, right? So there's a for a lot of the things I need, I just need semantics of, is this thing similar? And I think Chris did a good job of describing that a little bit. But is this related? Is this similar? And I don't need a language model to give me the answer to that. All I need is a lightweight, sentence transformer and a vector or some interface to the information. And for that, I can train my own models. I've got a router that essentially routes to the most appropriate location to answer my question. And that might be Claude Opus 4.5 or some other, big name language model, or it might be a super small model that I trained locally that solves that one particular thing, but doesn't basically do anything else. or it could be just an interface to the vector itself, depending on how and what the properties of what I need to return are. Maybe I just need a JSON output and I don't really need it to be transformed into like a sentence or a paragraph. And in that scenario, a structured output is more than adequate, but I need to be able to make that decision really, really fast. So the router, which then I apply a form of fast GRNN, which is basically a graph neural network, understands the nuance of those differences between where and what I should do, and it does that in milliseconds, microseconds, and can allocate before you realize you need to do that allocation without adding latency to the request. So it goes A, B, or C in almost instantaneously, but learns the differences between A, B, and C.
Okay, so no, I understand what you are saying. It makes sense. The only thing is sometimes the landscape of embedding space is very wide, very large. Sometimes the optimizer can collapse if you try to find the right information. And
Well, when you,
my point here. Yeah, go ahead.
when you look at, so here's a good example. I'm building a light version of the Root vector system that runs entirely in your browser, and you're going to notice a couple things here. This is a simulation for like weather, a groceries chain or something. And what's important to look at is I'm running at 128 dimensions. And the reason I'm running at 128 is, one, it has to be small. Two, I'm running the entire model in the memory on whoever visits this website. So I probably, I can't have a large vector space because of the infinite, and so the reality is, you want small and fast, you use smaller amount of dimensions, in the most simple terms. And then to optimize dimensions, you use, the options that provide the most efficient means of accessing that information quickly, which is a combination of a couple of core algorithms and the dimensional size.
Okay, sounds good. So anyway, I built the algorithm for high dimensional space. If you have any question, I'm here. I'm happy to help, and I published the paper. Yeah, and now I filed a patent about it, but I let it for researcher if you want to use it, because you guys are foundation, you can use it, I think, because it's not for commercial use. And let me know. So I already it's not
I would warn, I'm gonna warn people, sharing proprietary algos in this crew is a recipe for someone copying it. So
Right.
if you're legitimately concerned about your intellectual property, I would suggest probably not giving it freely away. Just for your own protection.
Yeah. Hey, Bibi, but interesting things you mentioned. The optimizer can collapse. That's how going to different spaces actually make them not to collapse. Because if you're trying to describe a guy like swinging the like a ball on the like attached to the rope, and he just turning it around. If you look from in three-dimensional like sort of human space, you need three variables with like almost like infinite values, like three floating numbers. But if you change the model and it's just the angle of, because the length of the string is fixed, so it's just a constant, it like you don't even optimize there. So you only have one variable like of what the angle of the position like of that ball on the string. So that's exactly, and if you try to optimize something, that's you basically collapse from 3 dimension to one, and that's like if you go higher dimensions, this collapse like does wonders. That's what roofs do, like doing for in hyperpower.
That's exactly. So that's exact. Well put, Vlad. Very well put. It's the interplay between the higher dimensional space, the area that sits outside of our reality, and the implementation of that, which is, let's just call it our reality, and understanding all the structures and pathways and that exist within it.
It's not even our reality. It's the way we look, and it's the way we describe our reality. You can describe the same reality in like 1,000 different ways, like, and some of them are extremely hard to optimize, and some it's like trivial. So
that's we had I think, Rob, you had something you wanted to present, so I don't want to forget about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and then we can get into if some folks are ready from the hackathon and want to show some stuff, we can do that as well. I've got a few slides, but I'll just recap first. So last Monday, I was invited to participate in the panel with Campaign Canada for the creative ad space industry. and I was on the panel with Ian McKinsey from he's got a marketing firm called Memory, and Carrie from the Vector Institute. The conversation was about AI in 2027, its impacts on their industry, and you can feel the anxiety in almost every industry in terms of job displacement and how much of the cognitive labor, especially in the creative space, as the models, Nano 3's just come out, and I'm sure you can all imagine if you step into the shoes of a creative ad industry, what the implications of generative AI are shaping up to be. So it was an interesting conversation. The industry isn't, we all see the long tail adoption lag, technically, right? Culturally, in the industries, is that ever pronounced? The unfamiliarity of the level of the capabilities of these systems when you build them is significant. So I'll give you an example, real quick example. We're just completing the twinning of a marketing agency, a client of ours, and we've rolled back to about 60% of the entire business flow. So that more than a business unit, that entire entity, front to back, developing it up AI native with no people. Hundreds of hours of video training, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rule sets, all being translated into code and nodes of intelligence put the way. So what that means for a company is now they're in a position of either super penetration or super profit. That's an old term from the Walmart era. When Walmart got access to inconceivably cheap manufacturing labor, they went to market. They could close down every local retailer because their products were so cheap, because they had almost eliminated labor from their cost of goods sold. They could dominate a marketplace with super penetration by bringing the prices down. And once there was no competition, bring the prices back up, and now they're in super profit. Same thing today with intelligence and AI. So a firm can go to market with legacy pricing, but no knowledge worker costs. So in this case, a cost of goods sold from that business unit represents 50%, and now it represents 2%. So they have massive margins, but they're still in market representing a legacy system and legacy pricing. Incredible time of transition. So the slides I just wanted to whip through, I had fun with this because what I did is I took the book. So I wrote the AI dividend last year. This is a year old. And so I just threw it through Google's LLM notebook to come up with a quick set of slides. So this is about, the AI dividend is about displacement and what do we do about it? And we won't get into all of it right now at all, but we know what's happening. We're tokenizing the business unit by business unit, task, role, business unit, company, industry, sector. We're converting it all to compute, right? From human cognitive labor to actual inference. That's a process I just refer to as tokenization. Then physical labor is coming, knowledge workers, absolutely. And fundamentally, the change is that humans cannot compete economically to perform those tasks. And so that's the transition. So what I propose, and I'll just leave everybody with it, is that a method of participation in an era where humans cannot compete intellectually for cognitive labor at the same economical price, economically, is that instead of a universal basic income, which would effectively be an allowance from a government, that we recognize data and we put data on the cap table, where individuals are earning a dividend based on what they've already contributed to AI, which was all of our data, whether we agreed to or not, right? And so this takes it out of a political sphere. Excuse me. It takes it out of a tax and redistribution. It takes it out from the notion of a handout, and it becomes a return based on what we've contributed to the project as a whole. And so that's the premise of the AI Dividend, the book that I published last year. And then this is just a little interesting summary of it. Did a pretty
And
good
Rob,
job. Yeah.
looks amazing. Quick question for you. What you mentioned a couple things, token, and there's a kind of sometimes when you hear token, you think smart contract, or you think of like something that's immutable, possibly. Like when you were saying, or in the AI world, token can sometimes represent like a word or space. Like how are you applying that exactly?
Right. So when I say tokenize, it's a conceptual transformation of human cognitive labor or workflows or business processes to AI flow, just the economy.
Like a quantifiable step or function?
No, literally in count. Like I'm thinking of it in the unit, the economic unit of a price per million tokens in and out. And that cycle, that economic cycle, becomes is effectively the transformation of what used to be a company, and now instead of physical resources and people showing up at an office, all that kind of thing, it's being performed entirely through the economy of software and tokens with AI, tokenized.
I think the challenge, and I'll be curious what others think, is in the like quantification of intelligence and like the output. And there was for a while over the last year or so, there's been a lot of business models emerging that are utility centric on like whatever it costs me to get, from OpenAI or whatever API I'm using, and then it's gonna mark that up based on some kind of token-based cost, right? If it costs me $10 for a million words, you're going to pay 20. Now, the challenge, I think, is we seem to be moving away from purely a language-centric AI model. And if you see the work that we've been doing over the last couple months, a lot of that work is actually in areas adjacent to just the language description of what we're doing, to the form and structure to how we get the information, which is generally just math. And if math is the central unit of value in most AI, how do we apply your kind of AI dividend, not just to the interpretation, but the sort of fundamental unit of value that underpins it?
Right, as you pointed out, AI drives a significant reduction in prices of all things.
Mm-hmm.
As that collapses and is driving towards really the cost of energy in order to perform economic, work units, what's there to assign as a dividend? And
Hey, Rob, this is Dave. I just got to add a quick question here for you. So at the end there, you was pretty interesting. What I netted out, what I thought I heard you saying was that, instead of getting the standard dividend from the government to compensate for the fact that, AI is outperforming humans computationally and they can't compete, it sounds like you're saying that advocating that basically humans sell themselves and the data that they generate. And you're legitimizing the fact is where, previously Google would invented the concept of you are the product, right? And you were being, Google was extracting your data without really your permission. Now you're saying, we'll do it with your permission. You value yourself, you sell yourself and the data you sell and the data you bring to it.
And historical recognition. So, it took three things to confirm that that all you need was scale. It took three things. It took capital, money, it took the science, the IP, and it took the data. And so data is the only thing that's not recognized on the cap table in this grand experiment. And we all contributed to it. And it was gathered from all sources everywhere. So it's a recognition of capital as data as equity, and that's the mechanism for participation. If we just leave data as a global free for all, you can get it wherever you can steal it, then there's no recognition of that fundamental contribution that we all made that enabled the achievement of this level of artificial intelligence. So I think it's both addresses the history and gives us a mechanism going forward.
Could I ask a
John?
question
Yeah.
here? Yeah. If I understand it correctly, what you're saying is that there is a surplus value of AI contribution that now is going to the investment community, that it belongs properly to all of us.
Exactly.
Now,
I,
my follow-up question,
Mhm.
how do you divide up that surplus value in a practical way? Because in a sense, it's a fiction, just like the surplus value of labor was to the 19th century, 20th century Marxism, because that's what Marxism was. It was a
Mhm.
surplus, was the value of labor. So now what you're saying is labor is now being data is being substituted for labor, and there is a surplus value that is being misallocated to the investment community that should be divided by all of us. But A, who does the division and on what basis? And how do you practically get to a return for individuals, or however you're going to distribute that?
Yeah, it's an
well,
excellent.
Yeah, I agree. That was kind of where I was going with my question as well. It's like not all data is equal, and not all data that individuals generate is equal as well.
No, that's
Yeah,
a different question, Dave.
that's
My,
another also good question. And so those are the mechanics that will need to be addressed and understood and agreed upon. But the alternative to something like that, like in Alberta, for example, we for many years we had a natural resources dividend, and so the oil resources, well, a percentage of those resources went to the general population of Alberta, and every citizen got a dividend payment every year. So similar to that, but the alternative to tying it to the economic activity of AI is to decouple it and create a tax and welfare superstate where an arbitrary amount is taxed out of corporate and remaining working tax pools, and then assigned to the population. And it's got no correlation with AI economic activity, and the data is never recognized as having been contributed.
but in your natural resources example, who did the distribute? Who was the entity that collected the money and distributed it? Wasn't it the government of
That
Alberta?
case, yeah, in that case, it was the government of Alberta. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I think the elephant in the room here, and people keep calling me a socialist, is the fact that the current working world is built not for an abundance of capability that well, the general value that's created isn't by people. And the assumption since basically, the Industrial Revolution is, the predominant mechanism to generate value, whether it's services or a factory worker or whatever, is a person doing that job. What we're quickly realizing in late 2025 is all the things we thought people were good at, whether it's creative pursuits, whether it's sitting in front of a computer and doing analytics or whatever, can be done cheaply and more effectively by advanced forms of automation and AI. And if that continues to be true, and we're in the various early stages of this transformation, and what does that mean in 10 years when that evolves even further? And every person basically that sits in front of a computer doing any form of computer work, analysis is now a kind of remnant. And, the value of that person's work drops tremendously. And that will either result in a huge dichotomy between a bunch of billion-dollar companies that basically hoard all the value and capability, and then everybody else that now has to reimagine what their purpose is in a world dominated by AI. And back to the idea of socialism, I think if I can interpret what Rob is saying, is there needs to be a purpose, or not purpose, a structure that allows us to take all that value that's being created by AI, which was essentially trained on all the information that we gave away freely, and give that back to us in a way that's meaningful, that doesn't just result in some kind of weird failed communist experiment where everyone's treated equally but no one has any purpose.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, I just want to add something to this. So like when you start putting the gates, you might actually lose the sort of derived benefits, because an example of it is when Google was going around and scanning the books, and I think that data set actually, the Google books contributed to all the LLMs, right? The French were actually prohibited it, and they told basically you cannot scan the book in like from French libraries. And as a result of that, the language models in French are much worse than the ones in English, or like it. And it actually it's not even only function of how spread the languages, because Italians did not prohibit it. So like the performance of language models when you talk to it in Italian is much higher than if you talk to it in French, just because when Google was like got the access to information, and then it became a big data set, and I mean it's distributed for free, but as the French speaking like person, because you
Vlad,
put the gates in
crawler,
there, that you sort of
your flip side there, Vlad, is that the French put their hand up and said, we want part of the economic value of you doing this. So
Yeah.
somebody will, in capitalism, somebody will come forward and say, you know what, you're right. Somebody wanted to extract value for free. They said no, because you're trained. Basically, there's this really old concept of like the commons, right? The grass that's shared.
Yeah.
So the French said, no, you can't have my data for free. So fine.
Yeah.
So somebody in capitalism, somebody should come forward and say,
yes,
you're
but
right. You
they
deserve
got
a
ignored,
dividend
right?
as a result of your intellectual property that we're trying to steal for free. So
Correct.
somebody come forward and somebody can make that value and that argument that they should
Yeah,
have.
but it seems like nobody bothered, because like you have alternative of the free. Like if everybody does it, yes, somebody will come. But because right now people ignored it, and as the result, sort of the French became marginalized. And I mean, it's
no different than Quebec.
Did they really become
I mean, it's not marginalized, but it's much.
Yeah.
If you look at the
Mistral's
basically
French.
if you exclude the Chinese and English, right, and look at the like how other languages perform with the models, it seems like French and Italian they about and should be in the same bucket, but Italian is much higher because they gave access to the books, and the French did not, and that's it's a librarian basically, right?
The EU's fundamental problem is they're this weird sort of mix of like a United States, a group of countries that want to sort of have their autonomy, but they're also economically bound by the EU and all the regulations for how you need to work, and regulations that are applied similar to the federal government in the United States. So they're kind of this weird sort of mashup of a federalist, slash pseudo republic, but with each of these states being autonomous and independent of the federal system. And either you're going to go full republic, or you're not. But they're doing they're doing each badly.
Yeah, but I think for cultural heritage, I don't know if EU actually says anything. I think each country is independent, and that's why French and Italians, because they're in the same organization, right? And one have like better advantage than the other.
One thing is that job displacement is on the rise, and it's right, and that transition is going to accelerate. I don't think. How long do you guys think before we really see the full impact of these new systems?
Revenue displacement also, right? Breaks the corporate model. How does a corporation exist if no one buys the goods?
It doesn't. That's the
Right.
problem. And there's this there's a hierarchy of like needs based on some sort of societal structure where somehow or other you've got these billionaires that can consume massive amounts of everything and at the detriment of the those who have the least, who the consumer economy rewards, so it's just this massive sort of separation between the ones that are doing all the effort and those who are getting rewarded for it. And I don't have a solution to it, obviously, but AI accelerates that, it seems. And it's going to accelerate it in potentially the worst possible ways for the people who are at the biggest risk already. You don't see billionaires, going hungry anytime soon, but the folks who are struggling to get by are now marginalized further.
That's techno capital. And I believe it was first defined in the 90s by an economist down in South America. And that's the increasing spinning of technology reinvested into capital, and the greater the advantage, et cetera. Techno capital spins up into a singularity. So, and that's what we're.
It used to be that production gains were actually split between the workers and the people that own the company and the founders and all that kind of stuff. And that broke about the time when they allowed corporations to be PACs.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a chart that shows the immense wealth disparity between there. So this is a systemic problem that's been going on with centralization of wealth and corporations. Like if you took too much to begin with, that's why you feel the need to give back.
Mm-hmm. And if capitalist best interest to not create a super state of dependency of the entire population of Earth as we go into this new era. I think it's in capitalism's best interests to consider all citizens participants by way of some form of participation. And I think the straight line is through data.
What's interesting, one thing, and you guys know I've been really into simulations recently. And I haven't published this because I didn't want to be labeled any more of a socialist than I already am. But there's this new system that I was devising. I use a supply chain as the example, but this could just as easily model the nature of our society over the next several years as technology sort of becomes more prevalent and cheaper. Now, you guys can install this, by the way. I published it earlier this afternoon. I'll pop it in the text area. But this is using all the vector self-learning. It's completely in your browser. No cloud required for AI kind of thing. But if you go here to the supply chain section, you can point your favorite Claude at it and basically say, model the next 10 years based on certain assumptions. Now, you're looking at assumptions right now based on like weather patterns and stuff like that, right? I'm looking at, is it gonna snow, and what will that do to different types of supply chain logistics, and then I'm modeling every possibility within the sort of vector graph space to do that. But what's really interesting here is it's the idea of being able to model highly complex interconnected causal relationships quickly, and in this case for free, and then understanding what the ramifications of those things are. In this case, I might need to go, and like I go to my stats, and it'll tell me that I need to do more, I need to buy something somewhere or other. And so it's giving me different forms of sort of insight into the system and learning patterns. But we're in a good spot to sort of understand what the potential ramifications are, reverse engineer what the worst possible outcomes of the future are, and take steps today to hopefully maybe mitigate those worst possibilities. Now, it's hard to compete against, the sort of inflection of corporate interests in governments, which now are intertwined at this point. So I don't know how much we can actually influence it, but it's interesting to look at regardless. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, you can kind of play with this a little bit, and this will create all the modeling. You see my Cypher integrations if you want to do graphs. So everything I've done in the root vector now running in a browser is a long story short here if you want to play with it. And I will I'm gonna give you, here's the
right, Riv?
Yeah. What's that?
That was a product of the hackathon.
Yes. A little bit. It was a product hackathon. This is a presentation I'm giving to some giant corporation this afternoon, And
Oh,
the story there is basically the cloud's dead. I can do everything you guys do I can do everything you guys do and then some in the browser, and I'm just doing it to kind of, just to show what's possible. But yeah, this is entirely running without a cloud.
Ruben
So
saying
Sweet.
to the cloud, I brought you into this world. I can take you out of it.
yeah, it's funny. It's a cycle, right? It's like I start with the cloud. Everyone's like, nah, no one's ever gonna want to, use the cloud. It's not your own environment. Then the cloud takes off. Then we realize that it's all just a form of lock-in. And now I spend all my time trying to figure out how to avoid being locked into those clouds.
So the,
Yeah.
so the interesting thing that you're just saying here, Ruth, and I was going to chime in a bit earlier as we were talking about the value of economics is, so I'm still monkeying around with the design studio for the eyewear industry. And I presented to a group where there was a woman and her entire team, and all they do is eyewear design. And I'm like, well, once like I have this other random experiment where I'm extracting from CAD files and generating full-on 3D models in an AI pipeline. And it's like the moment where you can come up with an idea with a pencil and say, well, I want something that looks like this, and you can render it in a 3D model that's like to the millimeter accurate that you can send to the plant. This design team is out of a job, right?
But
And I
isn't
kind of
isn't that then just a
find
question
them,
of
and it's like clearly it's like, yeah, we want to stick with the existing process. So as you're talking to these people, the question becomes, how do you present this in such a way that you don't instantly trigger complete resentment? Because you said this months and months ago, right? Like data teams don't like you because they're like, look, you're wasting
They hate me.
cycles. So how do you land these kinds of conversations with customers? Because the executive is going to be like, you know, uh, I love the idea of reducing my costs because that goes to my bottom line. The team's freaking out going, well, I'm not going to support Ruben these ideas because he's just going to cost us our jobs. That like, how do you have to be conscious of like how we talk to these people in
I
their
don't the
enjoying.
rank Yeah, the rank and file have a strong disdain for me, and I know it. I've seen it. I come in, I can like replace a group in an afternoon with relative ease. Now, the challenge that I have in that work is, in order to replace, and I don't want to be the guy replacing, just to be clear, but that's part of the work of an agentic engineer at this point, is the ability to understand what their job entails. And to understand what their job entails, it involves one, just looking at what data trail that job leaves behind in terms of HR and various other parts of what's happening in their day in the life of that job. The other part is like just asking them what their job is and what are the worst parts of your job. And that's the part that's a little tricky, right? Because by this point, they're gonna know why I'm there. I'm the Agentics guy, so that's code pretty much for job replacement in a tough economy. So the challenge I have is I always want those people to be sort of empowered by this technology, but I also understand that the companies that are bringing me in don't necessarily want that empowerment.
And of course, and there's only one entrance in and out. There's no back entrance that connects to.
Oh, I think he's
Oh,
hot.
Yeah,
it sounds all right. It sounded like he was actually having a conversation with us, but I think it was ordering a pizza.
I wanted to add something to add on to Alex and what you mentioned, Rob, about how long do we have. You take things like the Waymo, for example. My mom, my girlfriend's father, they won't even get in one, right? But we see people getting these self-driving cars. Ruth has a perfect analogy where he talks about how in one of his posts where you talk about Ruth, where you get in the car and you realize that it can drive itself, and then you may have your hands on the steering wheel, and then you take your hands off for a moment, and then next thing you know, after a period of adoption steps, you're in the back sleeping or reading a book, and you're very comfortable with the fact that you can trust that you're going to get to A to Z safely. So initially I thought, I'm looking at things like Suno, music applications. I thought we're always going to need a human in the loop for things like taste things like something that you have to have an opinion about. But now I'm even seeing, I tried Suno on Black Friday. Now I'm even seeing that the taste and other elements that are critical to us as humans can also be mimicked, if you will, because of the ability of Suno to do vocal arrangements. So I think once we are able to fully trust, Joe, the factory guy, can fully trust that his widgets can be made hands off with no humans, where we have a real big challenge.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, Alex, to your point, like when we're working with a company and we know we've got displacement, a lot of what we're doing is having conversations about what's next for that company and what's next for those people. What is the next set of activities that they can move on to work higher up the value chain? Now that what used to be hard is simple and almost free once it's built.
It's also interesting. I think it's kind of like I think it follows the like first industrial revolution, like so like to the point people don't get in Weimar right now. People in 1800s would not get on a train because they say like, what the hell? It's like goes around without horses, like it's some kind of devil's work, right? And as for displacement, I think different professions be like displaced differently because at work we recently got the web app built by biological process engineer. It would take basically a team of like 3 years ago. It would basically not happen because like it would be like a team of like 10 web developers and token things be like misinterpreted. They would build like something 3 months later, and it's not what he originally wanted. Like, and that's actually my problem with agentic coding is I sometimes when I start a project right now, I don't have good idea what I actually want to happen. Like, so I write the spec and the agents build everything according to the spec, and I look and said, hey, like I didn't want it, but with agentic stuff, you can basically do it in parallel, different ways. There is a cost is essentially zero, right? And that's the same with biological engineer. He built the whole process control like a dashboard that it's
I think what you said
basically
about parallel, working in parallel, I think is the prime foot in the door. You don't say we can replace existing workers or cheaper. Say we can allow you to expand where you thought you couldn't afford to expand
right
by doing something extra.
Certain things, because now the front-end engineer basically is taken out of the loop but not all engineers, right? So he's in biological processes and he builds all this like weird bioreactors, and he just wanted a web app that basically let them control, and it has picture, it looks beautiful. He has zero experience in web development and like and it's actually, I mean, it's not a complete web app, but now like we can basically take it and we know exactly that's what he wants, like. And so but all the front end like designers kind of they might actually get shrunk. I don't think they will disappear because actually, speaking of horses, right now the horse industry, it's one of the highest paid jobs. Like if you know how to put the
not as
on
many.
the horse, like you get. I think.
Yeah, we don't need any front end design. Because we all have Bensa. So
no, but inventing
UK,
like a new type of like
for all of us
interfaces basically. But right now, it basically, if you have a horse, right, it costs like I think $90 to put the shoe on one leg. Like so, it's actually like right now, if you know how to do the what's the job farrier, like to shoot the horse, like it's $360 basically.
So we got one more. I'm gonna jump here in a minute here, but we got one last comment from Lorraine, I think, before we have to wrap up. Unfortunately, I got a pre-back day here. Lorraine, you got a final comment?
Yeah, so it's just some takeaways. So this week obviously was quite challenging, but like I said, let's keep looking at things as opportunities rather than problems. The fact that we all came together, we worked together, we built on the knowledge of each other from the hackathon, we supported each other with the name types issues. I think we should just keep growing. I think also in terms of the jobs and thinking about your role in automation, if you focus on the value you're adding and you're bringing to the organization, and in terms of the strategy and the impact of that, let the people who are hiring or the decision makers worry about that. Just do things that you're comfortable with. And I think keeping a positive mindset, supporting each other, then we're doing all right.
Here, here. I agree, and I really do appreciate all the support that everyone has been giving. It was a good week in the sense that I feel like we've created something special, unique in our community, and we've got a really smart, empathetic group. What more can we ask for? Yeah, I love you guys too. Okay, I'm not going to be around. I'm not going to be around next week.
Happy
Rob
holidays.
yeah. So and again, we'll figure it out. At the very least, it'll be interesting and it'll be a story we can tell. Let's arrange some discussions around the trademark stuff. Let's make that happen quickly, I think, and let's see where it goes. We'll keep building. We'll keep creating, inventing, and really, that's all that matters to me. So I that's it. I gotta go. I got one of those
Knock it out of the
giant
park.
presentations. Yeah. So,
Press.
yeah, I enjoy the giant companies are taking note. Just to be clear, they reached out and they're like, WTF, how are you guys doing this stuff with no budget, right? So people are noticing. So it's not going unseen. That's it. I got a perk for that. So thanks everyone. And I might hop on the Discord later and maybe just hang out, just do some vibing at the end of the day.
Awesome.
Oh, cool.
Thanks everybody.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
And if I don't see you, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Eid, whatever you celebrate. Send in all my love to all you.
Are you going
Thanks
to be
again.
around Monday, Proof?
Yeah, I'm around Monday. I'm around Monday and Tuesday.
Okay.
I leave for Wednesday. All right.
See you
Thank
guys.
you, bye, everyone.
Bye.